What's up you guys, Charles here, welcome back to the channel. Now, is dividend investing really worth it? In today's video I'm going to go over the pros as well as the cons about dividend investing because it's a very debated topic on the internet and has been even before the internet. But I'm going to start by going over the cons and then I'll go over the pros. Now, the first downside with dividend investing is that it does cap your return. For example, growth stocks that don't pay dividends out, well, the managers are able to take all the profits they've gained from their company and reinvest them directly into the company, and they are often the people that know where to invest more than you. However, with dividend stocks, they are more or less obliged, although they're not 100% obliged, and we'll talk about another con later related to this, but they have to pay you a certain percentage that they promise you to pay. That is taking out some money that they could have invested into their own company, which would have grown it more and increase your capital growth. So by investing in a dividend paying company, you are essentially capping the amount of growth you can get. For example, if you were to buy Apple in the 1980s, you'd be very, very wealthy. But if you were to buy a certain amount of stocks just based on how high their dividends pay, then you are very likely to be a lot less wealthy than that. Now, the second downside to investing in dividend returning stocks is that you can't really invest into index funds based on how much dividends they pay. Normally, you're way better off if you're investing for dividends to pick your own stocks, and these take a lot of time because although maybe if you're a beginner and you think that you can just pick the stock with the highest dividend yield and just invest in that, then you'd be wrong, because you want to be investing in stocks that have almost never cut or completely stopped their dividends, and also that dividends have been increasing gradually over the years, because that shows that the company is also growing and that the company has opportunity for growth, because you don't want to invest in the company exclusively for their dividends, because if they're not growing then they might go bankrupt and then you lose all the capital. Although you've taken a bit out of the dividend they've paid you, you are losing out on all that capital and potential capital growth also. And on top of this, if for nothing else, it takes a huge amount of time to be able to pick a stock correctly. So if you're dividend investing, you have to do this for all of them. And as I said before, you don't really have a huge variety of dividends related index funds. Now, another con with dividend investing is, as I mentioned in point 1, is that especially if you're under 30, which most of my audience are, then you want to be investing for growth and not dividends, because dividends you need when you're going to retire. And so really, if you're under 30, you should be aiming to use that compound interest, get the maximum growth you can as early as you can. And then once you've accumulated all that capital, you can then go and invest that into dividend paying stocks so that that can give you a passive income and is also tax advantageous, which I will cover later on in the video. Now, a final disadvantage of dividend investing in general is that you are at the mercy of the share price for the most part, because the dividend yield is based on the percentage of the value of the share. Now, the problem with dividends being based on the share price is that normally high dividend paying stocks are only invested in for their dividends, and that's what boosts up the share price. So if the company, which they can do at any point, is cut down the dividend yield or eliminate it altogether, which HSBC has done during the coronavirus problems, and led to the share price of HSBC to go crashing down. And although you then would have got that 4-5% of the dividend yield over the years, you would have lost all that capital value that you wouldn't have lost otherwise, or less likely to have lost otherwise, in a growth stock, because it's prone to less things that will make the share price go down. Now, enough with all the negatives, and let's get into the positives of dividend investing, because it can be quite good for a lot of people. Now, the first benefit, and perhaps the most obvious one, is it is a sort of loophole to get out of income tax and some other taxes, whether you're in the UK, the US, and a lot of other countries in the world. You get taxed less on dividend income than you do on regular income, for example. So this is a great way when you're retiring, or if you want to get extra money in that is taxed less, then you would do so by getting dividends. And so this basically allows you to get just more money of the money you've invested. Whereas when you take money out of an ISA, for example, or a Roth IRA in America, then you pay income tax on that, which is often 45, 40 or 50% based on where you live, especially in America, but also your tax bracket, whilst dividends normally get taxed around 20% depending on the country it changes. So it's a great way to shield yourself from taxes. And that is why, as I said before in the video, if you're older, then dividend investing is definitely the way to go over sort of 30 or 35, or maybe before that, based on when you want to retire, or at least have that supplemented income which can allow you to do other things. Now, another benefit that investing in dividends has is it has a lot less fluctuation, as in dividends often remain the same or increase or decrease a tiny little bit, whereas growth stocks normally fluctuate a huge amount, so you're sort of shielding yourself from the general volatility of the stock market, because dividends constantly give you money and fluctuate, as I said, a lot less than the stocks. Now, another great thing with dividends investing is that if you have a very large diversification in the dividends you're investing in and different dividend stocks that are well risk assessed, then it provides a huge and very reliable income stream. So if you're retiring, that can be one of your 5 or 6 income streams they should have built up. And the other thing is that although, as I said, companies can cut or eliminate dividends altogether. With the most reliable companies, that won't happen because they know that that will severely affect their stock price, which will in turn severely affect their company if they were to do that. So they would only do that in very extreme cases. That can happen during a recession, for example, or depression, or any sort of market downturn where they need that extra money and they can't afford to give it to their investors. Now, the other great thing you can do with dividends is do the DRIP, or Dividend Reinvestment Plan. This essentially allows you to reinvest the dividends that the stock has paid you straight back into the share price. So if you get £100 in dividends from that stock and the share price is £100, then it will invest that £100 straight back in and buy a new stock for you. And this allows you to use the compounding effect to your advantage. So instead of taking the money out now, you can compound that stock price and increase your portfolio value. And dividends are actually responsible for a huge amount of growth in the American stock market, for example, over time, because all the people reinvest their dividends until they retire, for the most part. Now, last but not least, of course, you need to smash that like button because it really helps me and the channel grow thanks to the YouTube algorithm. And if you want to see more content like this, then feel free to leave a comment so I know, and subscribe. And if you've got any questions or any ideas for future videos that you'd like me to talk about or address, then leave those down in the comment section too. I try to respond to all of the comments that I can. Thanks for your time and see you next time.